views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
Tonight on Politics Now, 13 Democratic presidential candidates descend on Nevada for the First in the West caucus event. The head of the state party tells us all about it.
I am definitely scared to lose the very small amount of protection that I have now.
DACA hanging by a thread, the hearing in front of the Supreme Court to do away with the program and how local recipients are preparing for the decision. Plus, it could be a heavyweight prize fight. Steve Wynn is fighting back against the Gaming Control Board. The I-Team exclusively obtained documents from Wynn saying why he thinks gaming regulators can't ban him or fine him.
From 8 News Now, this is Politics Now with Steve Sebelius.
Las Vegas once again at the center of the presidential race this weekend. Thanks for joining us. I'm Steve Sebelius. Tomorrow, the state Democratic Party is hosting its First in the West event featuring 13 Democratic candidates, including all the frontrunners. I interviewed State Party Chairman William McCurdy II about it. There's some people that say Nevada gets neglected or overlooked. I look at events like this, like the AFSCME event, the AFL-CIO event, the SEIU event, and I say, I don't think we're being overlooked. I think we're getting more than our fair share of visits.
Well, you know what? It's an exciting time for our state. You know, us being, first in the West, third in the nation. Nevada is important for a lot of different reasons. Number one, because our growing diversity, our growing union membership. We have about 14% union density here in the state of Nevada, which is, the highest in the country. So candidates are taking Nevada seriously. They're coming out here. They're making their voice heard. They're pleading their case, and we're better for it.
The First in the West event. How did that come about? What's the idea behind it, and how will you measure success? How will you say, you know what, we really had a successful event here?
Well, we're already successful because we have 13 candidates that are confirmed to be here, and that lets us know that they are actually taking Nevada seriously. Next, we'll be able to look at, actually you say why have the First in the West event? Because we're highlighting our First in the West status, we're highlighting our diversity, we're highlighting the opportunity for the candidates to come and directly present their case to Nevada voters. And we're expecting a strong turnout, and we're also expecting some great speeches from our phenomenal Democratic candidates.
Polls show Joe Biden doing very well. Bernie Sanders has also done very well here. Elizabeth Warren is creeping up. What's your sense of the race? Is it anything goes? I mean, anybody can win at this point, or do you see there's front runners, leading the pack?
Nevada's wide open. For a lot of different reasons.
So anybody can win.
Anybody can win Nevada, but the candidate that comes early and comes often will do better than others who don't, and that's just the reality of it. If you're present, you're going to win. If you're taking our state seriously, you're having a statewide strategy, not only in Southern Nevada but also in Washoe County and across the state. You're going to do very well.
Well, you can watch that full interview on our website at 8newsnow.com. That event starts tomorrow at the Bellagio at 7 o'clock. Now, you want to get there early if you're going, because there is a lot going on tomorrow, including the Rock and Roll Marathon and a Golden Knights game. The event is sold out, and there's a waiting list, but the party will be live streaming the entire event on its Facebook page, including a tribute to the man who brought Nevada its early caucus date, former U.S. Senator Harry Reid. Well, Second Lady Karen Pence was in Las Vegas to speak to a group of volunteers from the group Latinos for Trump.
Because America is winning under President Trump. Hispanics and Latinos are winning under President Trump. We've seen the unemployment rates among Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, African Americans at their lowest levels ever recorded.
During that event at the East Las Vegas Community Center, Pence went through a long list of Trump administration accomplishments focusing on the economy. After the rally, there was a training session on recruiting and mobilizing volunteers on the local level. Well, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments on the fate of undocumented immigrants, often called dreamers. The DACA program gives work and school permits to those undocumented immigrants who arrived in the U.S. as children and protects them from deportation. But President Trump decided to end the program in 2017. Our Washington correspondent Alexander Limon was at the hearing.
Outside of the U.S. Supreme Court, hundreds gathered and cheered for the group of young people who sued to stop the Trump administration from ending DACA. Undocumented! One of the plaintiffs is Ileana Fernandez, a DACA recipient and mother of U.S. citizens.
My children deserve to stay with their mother in the place they call home. I hope that the justices can see our humanity.
Inside the courtroom, Justice Sonia Sotomayor said the Trump administration is required to give more than 6 months' notice before taking actions that destroy lives.
There's a right way and there's a wrong way to do things. The federal government tried to terminate the DACA program the wrong way.
California's Attorney General Javier Becerra said the Trump administration did not provide reasons as legally required when ending a program like DACA.
On the other side, the government argues they provided multiple reasons why, and they say even if those reasons aren't good enough, the Trump administration is arguing that DACA itself is illegal.
Justices Neil Gorsuch and Stephen Breyer, a conservative and a liberal, both said they're struggling with how much power the courts have to review government decisions. The justices are expected to reach a decision by June. In Washington, Alexandra Limon.
Well, there are more than 13,000 DACA recipients here in Nevada, including UNLV students. A few held a rally on campus this week to show their support for the program. Kristen Drummond attended the event and spoke with a few who say they fear what's coming next.
Home is here!
Home is here!
Chanting loudly with signs in hand, UNLV students expressed their concerns.
I think there's a definite fear about the way that the Supreme Court may rule. The case is going to be heard today.
Maria Nieto Horta says her future remains in limbo. She's a DACA recipient who came to the U.S. from Mexico before her second birthday.
I definitely don't have any memory of what it was before being here. I also do have family who is completely undocumented.
The UNLV junior worries her dreams of continuing life in Nevada may shatter depending on the justice's decision.
I am definitely scared to lose the very small amount of protection that I have now.
Others sharing the same sentiment during the rally at Free Speech Plaza. Some students walking by signed their names in chalk on the pavement to show their support for the DACA program.
And I just wanted to, be here in solidarity.
If the DACA program is taken away, a professor of law here at UNLV says it may have adverse consequences for Nevada's economy.
Less sales tax revenue collected because people aren't able to work who are extremely well integrated into our economy.
Possibly impacting the workforce. But Nieto Horta and her classmates want to stress their home is here. Kristen Drummond, 8 News Now.
President Donald Trump tweeted about DACA recipients the day of the hearing. He said most are far from angels and some are very tough and hardened criminals. But the president claims he wants a deal with Democrats to keep Dreamers here if the Supreme Court overturns that decision. Steve Wynn is firing back at the Nevada Gaming Control Board. The I-Team first obtained documents filed in a legal battle against the state. State regulators say he should still face consequences for allegations he sexually harassed his former employees. Vanessa Murphy has that story.
Steve Wynn is saying Nevada gaming regulators have no jurisdiction over him since he walked away from Wynn Resorts in February of 2018. But technically, Steve Wynn isn't banned from the Nevada casino industry yet. On October 14th, the Gaming Control Board filed this complaint against Wynn. The goals to revoke his finding of suitability, which is similar to a license to remain active in the casino industry, and to fine Steve Wynn after an investigation found evidence of sexual conduct between Wynn and subordinate employees, an effort by Wynn to silence the women, and Wynn failing to appear and testify. The I-Team obtained this response, a motion to dismiss just filed by Steve Wynn's legal team, where they say Nevada's gaming regulators cannot discipline a person who no longer has any involvement with a Nevada gaming license. His attorneys claim he no longer poses a threat to the industry or the public at large. They're saying the finding of suitability doesn't matter because Wynn, again, is no longer involved in the casino industry. They say the only goal that has not been achieved for regulators is to impose significant fines on Steve Wynn. They accuse them of seeking a, quote, exit tax, unquote. Wynn Resorts in Nevada was fined $20 million this year for failing to investigate claims of sexual harassment and misconduct by Steve Wynn. Regulators in the state of Massachusetts fined Wynn Resorts $35 million. Steve Wynn has settled lawsuits and he's been accused of paying hush money to alleged victims, but Steve Wynn as an individual has not been fined by gaming regulators so far. Vanessa Murphy, 8 News Now.
We have a link to the Nevada Gaming Control Board where you can learn more about the complaints. That's at 8newsnow.com. Well, up next, public impeachment hearings.
The president wasn't watching, he was working. He has a job to do as president.
Alexander Limon helps me break down what happened during the first week of the public hearings in the House. And should regents be elected or appointed? We asked Higher Education Chancellor Tom Riley. That's next on Politics Now.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
The first public impeachment hearing revealed a major new piece of information about a call between Gordon Sondland and President Trump discussing Ukraine and investigations into the Bidens. Our Washington correspondent Alexander Limon spoke to the White House Deputy Press Secretary about the new information and the phone call in question.
White House officials are brushing off the first public hearing in the impeachment inquiry.
The president wasn't watching, he was working. He has a job to do as president.
Senator Chuck Schumer says he and other senators who could become jurors in an impeachment trial were paying close attention.
The evidence we all heard from Mr. Taylor and Mr. Kent cast a troubling portrait of a president who is trying to use the powers of his office for personal political gain.
Makes what Nixon did look almost small.
Lawmakers are particularly interested in new information revealed by Ambassador William Taylor, who said one of his staff members heard Ambassador Gordon Sondland and President Trump on a phone call discussing Ukraine, Burisma, and the Bidens. The deputy press secretary said the White House doesn't think the new information about that phone call is important and that President Trump isn't worried.
It's like having a conversation with your father's brother's cousin's nephew's former roommate. It doesn't amount to anything. The fact is, the president has done nothing wrong.
Now the Associated Press reports there's a second person who heard the call. Sondland himself is scheduled to testify publicly next week and will likely be asked about the call. He's already told the committee that the release of U.S. military aid to Ukraine was tied to the investigations President Trump wanted. In Washington, Alexandra Limon.
Well, I talked with Alex after the hearing to dig a little deeper into what was said during the testimony. Take a listen. Given the fact that now there are two people who say they witnessed it, whether the president recalls it or not, if there's two people who have witnessed it and who say some in substance what was on that call, what the request was of the president to Ambassador Sondland at the time, and the fact that there was a request for this investigation, that not only buttresses what the whistleblower said, what the rough transcript of the call said, but also some of the narrative that is coming out about this. So it would seem to be, as you said, getting a little bit more tricky for the White House.
Yeah, and keep in mind, Gordon Sondland initially, when he went in for his first closed-door hearing with lawmakers, he denied that there was any quid pro quo, but then he submitted an additional kind of letter of testimony clarifying his testimony, and that letter, what it essentially said was, well, actually, I was working to try to get the Ukrainian officials to investigate this company that was tied to Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, and we were withholding kind of some things in exchange for that. And so he kind of corroborated these claims and some of the things that Ambassador Bill Taylor and others have testified to. He supported what they said in that amended testimony. So now that he's going to be in a public setting testifying before lawmakers.
So, Alex, one last thing. In terms of the rest of the testimony, we're going to hear from the former ambassador to the Ukraine. This was someone who President Trump said had problems and who was eventually removed from that position as figured into this business by also saying there was things going on outside the normal channels of the State Department that were going on sort of around the usual process.
She says the only reason she was ousted as ambassador to Ukraine is because Rudy Giuliani put a target on her back, because according to her, some of his business associates in Ukraine didn't like her and didn't like the work she was doing to try to fight corruption in Ukraine. So that's her story.
We'll have more with Alex next week on what happened during that testimony. Up next, fixing remedial education.
Both nationally in Nevada, that has been a phenomenal failure.
The chancellor of the higher education system sits down with us to talk about why colleges and universities are working with the K-12 system to fix remedial education, and a lot more. Stay with us.
You're watching Politics Now.
Tom Riley is the chancellor of the Nevada System of Higher Education. He's serving a 3-year tenure that's just about up. Then he'll head back to Arizona. I sat down with him to ask about what fixes he thinks the system needs after serving in it. What do you think of the structure? Is it effective? Is it working? There's a change that's coming up that would take the Board of Regents out of the Constitution. They'd still be elected. They'd still be in charge of the system. They wouldn't be listed in the Constitution, however. What do you think of that idea, and what do you think of the system itself? Is it working?
Well, you know, whether there's an appointed board or elected boards, I mean, it's the people that make them work sometimes.
Yeah.
So you can have appointed boards that don't work very effectively as well as elected boards. But, you know, there was some legislation that was introduced that looked at a hybrid. You know, Nevada, for good, bad, or indifferent, has valued the idea of electing individuals. We elect our Supreme Court. Now, as county manager, I had a big battle with the county recorder, making the argument that she should not be elected because she wasn't a policymaker and she was a crook at the time.
Yeah.
Wasn't very successful. In fact, I think the county commissioners got more hate mail.
Or some local leaders who have said in other states, community colleges are under the purview of local governments, and they're more attuned to workforce development, job creation, that sort of thing. Should the Community College of Southern Nevada, in all of its different campuses, be under the control of the local agencies? The city of North Las Vegas, for example, John Lee is one of the big proponents of this idea. Is that a good idea, or is it a bad idea?
Well, I think it's a good idea until the mayors and local governments realize they would have to give up some of their property tax in order to fund it. I know when I was county manager, we were approached with that same issue, and we said, yeah, we'd consider it, until the topic came, well, would you give up some of the property tax to fund higher education? And that was a no-go at the time. You know, I would argue on that pretty forcefully, is that having the one system makes a lot of sense. When we look at other states that look at Nevada and have one seamless system of higher education, we have the community colleges, the state college, and the university system under one system.
Yeah.
That's valued.
Our regent told me, now this was 2 or 3 years ago, I believe. I don't know if the numbers have changed, but a regent told me that about 50% of the students from the Clark County School District who come to UNLV or to UNR need to take remedial classes. Has that changed? It hasn't. Those numbers are startling, and it's why one of the significant initiatives that I pushed forward was our partnership with K-12 in Clark County to address several issues, to address the issue of remedial education, also a more seamless workforce development, a dual enrollment of young people. But on the remedial education, is that both nationally in Nevada, that has been a phenomenal failure. One is that remedial education should be at the K-12. It should be in high school, not at the community college or university level. It is overpopulated with poor kids, with Hispanic kids, with African American kids, and it is a failure. It's why I push the board, and the board has adopted a co-requisite model. In 2 years, we will do away with remedial education. It's twofold. One, I have an agreement with Superintendent Jara that will push remedial and start testing individuals their sophomore and junior year, so they're taking the remedial classes in high school, particularly their senior year. When they come to us, they come on day one. And are enrolled and mainstreamed. And the difference with this model, the co-requisite model, is they'll get real-time advising, counseling, and tutoring as they take the class. You know, if you think of it, placing poor-performing students with other poor-performing students is a disaster. Well, you can see the rest of that interview on our website. That's 8newsnow.com. Well, up next, honoring an advocate for students. the dedication of a new building in the name of former Assemblyman Tyrone Thompson. That's next on Politics Now.
You're watching Politics Now.
Servicemen and women were honored across the country this week as the nation observed Veterans Day. In Boulder City, the honors were for several generations, from World War II to Korea and Vietnam to those still on active duty. Governor Sisolak thanked all of them and their families and paid tribute to those who never returned home. At the end of his remarks, he got emotional, talking about a letter a 15-year-old girl wrote and handed out to veterans downtown. Here's part of what it said.
Find something beautiful in your life every day. You can always find light through the darkness, even on worst days. Never forget, you are my hero.
Governor Sisolak also announced a renovation of the Veterans Home in Boulder City. He's calling for improved safety for staff and vets, as well as better air conditioning and more comfortable beds. Well, the College of Southern Nevada's North Las Vegas campus is naming its student union after the late former Assemblyman Tyrone Thompson. Thompson was known as a tireless advocate for education and mentorship, particularly for minority students. He unexpectedly died earlier this year during the 2019 session. The dedication was held this week at the 29,000 square foot building. It features dining options, offices, and a food pantry for food insecure students. Somehow I think Tyrone Thompson would definitely appreciate that honor. Well, that's our show. Thanks for watching Politics Now. If you have questions about politics, state, local, or national, you can email me. That's sSebelius@8newsnow.com. Stay with us every week and tune in next week when we'll have another edition of Politics Now. Your local news is next with Sasha Loftus, so stay tuned for that.